My pack sold me on a winter morning when the frost still clung to the ground. They said I was worthless, wolfless, a curse wrapped in skin. And as I stood in chains before the cruelest alpha the realm had ever known, I believed them. Kaden of Valdemore was called many things: ruthless, merciless, a king who had executed his own generals for failure. Rumors said darkness lived inside him, that shadows moved beneath his skin, that he hadn't smiled in a decade. He walked past warriors and noblewomen without a glance, past Omegas who wept and begged to be chosen, past daughters of allied packs who had been groomed their whole lives for this moment, and then he stopped in front of me. "This one," he said. "I'll take her." The hall erupted. My own father's face twisted with shock before settling into something satisfied and cold. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Me, gone. His shameful, broken daughter. Finally, someone else's problem. I didn't understand why a king would choose the one wolf who couldn't shift. Not until he made his terms clear. He would marry me, protect me, give me everything I needed to survive. But there was one condition, spoken with a voice like winter wind through dead trees. "I will never love you," he said, "and you will never ask me to." I agreed. What choice did I have? But neither of us understood what would happen on our first night together. Neither of us knew that the moment my skin touched his, everything would change. The morning they sold me, my brother Jorath couldn't meet my eyes. He stood beside our father at the front of the pack hall, arms crossed, jaw tight, staring at some point above my head as if looking directly at me might turn him to stone. I wanted to hate him for it. I wanted to scream that we had grown up together, that he had once carried me on his shoulders through the forest, that he had promised our dying mother he would protect me. But I was too tired for hatred. Too hollowed out by years of being called cursed, broken, less than nothing. "Seren of Thornvale," the auctioneer announced, his voice echoing through the stone chamber. "Unmated, 23 years of age." He paused, and I heard the contempt dripping from his next words. "Wolfless." Whispers erupted through the crowd like wildfire through dry brush. "Wolfless. Why would anyone want a wolfless Omega? She's not even a true wolf. She's a shell, an abomination. Brennick must be desperate to be rid of her if he's putting her up for trade." My father stood straighter at the mention of his name, his silver-streaked hair gleaming in the torchlight. Alpha Brennick of Thornvale, respected, feared, and thoroughly disgusted by his youngest child. I kept my head bowed, my wrists aching where the ceremonial chains bit into my skin. The chains weren't necessary. I couldn't have fought my way out of a paper bag, much less escaped a hall full of wolves. But tradition demanded that trade offerings be bound. It reminded everyone of what we were: property. "She can cook," the auctioneer continued, clearly struggling to find selling points. "She's literate, reasonably attractive, would make a suitable household servant or—" He cleared his throat. "Bed warmer." My cheeks burned, but I didn't look up. I had learned long ago that showing emotion only made things worse. "What's wrong with her?" a gruff voice called out. "Why can't she shift?" "Unknown," the auctioneer admitted. "Her wolf never emerged. Some believe it's a curse. Others believe she was simply born defective." Defective. The word landed like a slap. "I'll give you 50 silver for her," someone shouted. "Could use another servant." 55, another voice countered. "My guards need entertainment." Laughter rippled through the crowd. My stomach turned. 70, my father said suddenly, his voice cutting through the noise. "The minimum bid is 70. She's still my daughter, worthless as she is." The hall quieted. Even the auctioneer looked uncomfortable. 70 silver. That was the price of a decent horse. My father had set my worth at the value of livestock, and he wanted everyone to know it. I closed my eyes, willing myself not to cry. I would not give him that satisfaction. The bidding stalled. 70 silver was too much for a wolfless Omega. I could feel the crowd losing interest, moving on, already forgetting I existed. If no one else bids, the auctioneer said slowly, the offering will be transferred to the labor camps by sundown. The doors exploded open. Not opened, exploded. The massive oak panels flew inward as if struck by a battering ram, slamming against the stone walls with a thunderous crack that made everyone flinch, and then the cold rolled in. It wasn't natural cold. It wasn't the winter chill that had been hovering outside the hall. This was something deeper, something that sank into your bones and made your wolf want to whimper and hide. Except I didn't have a wolf. So I just stood there, frozen in a different way, as the most terrifying man I had ever seen walked through the ruined doorway. He was tall. That was my first thought. Tall and broad and built like a warrior god had decided to take mortal form. His hair was black as midnight, falling to his shoulders in waves that looked almost liquid in the torchlight. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, his cheekbones high and cruel, and his lips pressed into a line that suggested he had forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. They were gray. Not the soft gray of morning mist, but the hard gray of storm clouds and sword steel and things that killed without mercy. And there was something moving in them. Something dark. Shadows that flickered and shifted like living things. "The Alpha King," someone gasped. "Gods above, it's Kaden of Valdemore." The whispers turned frantic. What is he doing here? Kings don't attend trade auctions. He hasn't left his castle in 3 years. Why would he come now? Look at him. Look at his eyes. Something's wrong with him. I barely heard them. I was too busy trying to remember how to breathe as Alpha King Kaden walked into the hall as if he owned it. As if he owned everything in it. As if the entire world existed only at his sufferance. He didn't look at the crowd, didn't acknowledge the auctioneer's stammered greeting or my father's deep bow. His gaze swept across the room with cold efficiency until it landed on the line of offerings. On us. He started walking forward, and the crowd parted before him like water before a blade. Even the most powerful alphas in the room stumbled backward, their wolves clearly screaming at them to submit. He stopped at the first offering, a young Omega who had been crying softly throughout the proceedings. He studied her for a long moment, his expression revealing nothing, and then moved on. The second offering, a widow from a fallen pack. He barely glanced at her. The third. A scarred warrior woman who had been captured in a border skirmish. His eyes lingered on her for a moment longer, but then he shook his head slightly and continued. I was at the end of the line. The last offering. The one everyone had already dismissed. His footsteps echoed through the silent hall. Each one felt like a countdown. Each one brought him closer to where I stood with my chains and my shame and my worthless, wolfless body. And then he was in front of me. I couldn't look up, couldn't move. The cold radiating off him was so intense that my breath came out in visible puffs, and I could feel my fingers going numb despite the relative warmth of the hall. The silence stretched. I could feel everyone watching. Could feel my father's eyes boring into my back, probably willing me to do something embarrassing so he could justify selling me even more. Look at me. His voice was deep and cold and utterly commanding. The kind of voice that expected obedience and received it without question. I raised my head. Our eyes met. And something inside me lurched. Not my wolf because I didn't have one. Something deeper. Something I didn't have a name for. It felt like recognition. Like coming home. Like finding something I hadn't known I was looking for. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. That flickering darkness in his gaze stilled for just a moment, as if it too was startled. This one. Alpha King Kaden said, his voice carrying through the hall with absolute finality. I'll take her. Chaos erupted. The carriage that bore me to Valdemore was nicer than any room I had ever slept in. Velvet cushions, heated stones tucked beneath wool blankets, windows of actual glass rather than oiled paper. I sat rigidly on the edge of the seat, afraid to touch anything, afraid to relax, afraid that this was all some elaborate joke, and I would wake up back in my father's hall, still worthless, still waiting to be sold to the labor camps. Through the window, I watched the landscape change. The sparse, rocky terrain of Thornvale gave way to rolling hills covered in snow. Then forests of pine and oak, their branches heavy with frost. Then, rising from the mist like something out of a nightmare, the castle of Valdemore. It was enormous. Obsidian spires clawed at the gray sky, their peaks lost in low-hanging clouds. The walls were black stone, polished smooth, reflecting the weak winter light like dark mirrors. No banners flew from the towers. No guards patrolled the visible walkways. The entire structure looked abandoned, or haunted. The carriage stopped. A servant opened the door and offered his hand without meeting my eyes. "This way, my lady." My lady, I almost laughed. I had never been called that in my life. I followed him through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadows above. Torches burned with flames that flickered between orange and an unsettling deep purple. The air was cold, so cold. We stopped before a massive door carved with wolves and shadows intertwined. "The king will see you now." The servant knocked twice and then retreated so quickly it was almost a run. The door swung open on its own. I stepped inside. The room was a study of contrasts. A fire roared in an enormous hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls lined with books. Heavy curtains blocked most of the windows. Maps covered a massive desk, their edges pinned down by daggers and empty goblets. And standing before the fire, backlit by flames that seemed to bend toward him, was the Alpha King. He had removed his traveling cloak. Beneath it, he wore simple black clothes that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the narrowness of his waist. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. And something else. Dark veins. Not blue like normal veins, but black. They crawled up his forearms like creeping vines, disappearing beneath his rolled sleeves. Occasionally, they pulsed, and the shadows in the room seemed to pulse with them. He caught me staring. His jaw tightened. "Sit." There was only one chair. I sat. Kaden remained standing, his back to the fire. The flames cast his face in harsh relief, all sharp angles and shadows. Those gray eyes studied me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. "I'm sure you're wondering why I chose you." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I need a wife," he said flatly. "An heir. Perhaps more than one. To secure the succession. You will provide these things." My mouth went dry. "Your Majesty, I should tell you that you're wolfless?" He tilted his head slightly. "I know. Your father made sure everyone in that hall knew. He wanted to humiliate you. He succeeded." Something flickered in Kaden's eyes. It might have been surprise. It might have been respect. It disappeared before I could be sure. "Your wolf, or lack thereof, doesn't concern me." That startled me enough to speak without thinking. "Why not? A wolfless Omega can't provide a proper mate bond. Our children might." "Might what?" He stepped closer, and the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. "Might be born without wolves themselves? Might be considered cursed? Might be sold by their own families to anyone willing to pay the price?" I flinched. Kaden stopped. He was close enough now that I could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way those dark veins crept up the side of his neck. "I don't care about your wolf," he said quietly. I care about your compliance. Give me heirs, attend official functions at my side, maintain the appearance of a functional marriage. And in return? In return, you will be protected, provided for, given every comfort this castle can offer. He paused. But I want to be clear about something. Yes? I will never love you. The words hung in the cold air between us. This is not a romance, Kaden continued, his voice hard. This is not a fairy tale where the monster learns to feel. I am incapable of love. I don't say this to be cruel. I say it because it's the truth, and you deserve to know it before you agree. Incapable of love. The way he said it. So certain. So final. It sounded less like arrogance and more like diagnosis. I understand, I heard myself say. Do you? Yes, Your Majesty. I met his eyes steadily. You're offering me safety, comfort, and purpose. In exchange, I give you heirs and compliance. You will never love me, and I will never ask you to. Something shifted in his expression, the same flicker of surprise I had seen before. Most women would weep at such terms. Most women haven't been called worthless every day of their lives. I lifted my chin. Cold indifference is a significant improvement over active hatred, Your Majesty. I accept your terms. Kaden studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharply. The wedding will take place tomorrow. Tonight, you'll rest. Tomorrow night. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Tomorrow night would be our first night together. A servant will show you to your chambers, he said, already turning back to the fire. I suggest you prepare yourself. I rose on shaking legs. I was almost to the door when his voice stopped me. Seren. I turned. He was still facing the fire, his back to me, but I could see his reflection in the dark window glass. Those black veins were spreading, crawling higher up his neck. He pressed a hand to his chest, and for just a moment his composed mask cracked. He looked like a man in pain. Yes, Your Majesty. Try not to be afraid of me, he said quietly. I have no intention of hurting you. And then he added, so softly I almost didn't hear it, I'm not sure I could hurt anyone anymore, even if I wanted to. The servant was waiting outside to escort me to my chambers, but as I followed her through the frozen corridors, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. The darkness crawling under his skin, the pain flickering across his face, the way the shadows in the room had moved with him, as if they were part of him. What had I agreed to? And what would happen when tomorrow night finally came? The wedding was a blur. I remember fragments. A white gown that someone must have prepared before I even arrived. A cathedral of black stone where purple flames burned in iron sconces. Vows spoken in voices that echoed off ancient walls. Kaden's hand, cold as winter itself, closing around mine as he slid a silver ring onto my finger. His eyes never left my face during the ceremony, those gray depths watching, waiting, searching for something I couldn't identify. When the officiant pronounced us mated, the gathered nobles waited for the traditional claiming bite. But Kaden simply lifted my hand to his lips and pressed a cold kiss to my knuckles. Tonight, he murmured against my skin, in private. Now, night had fallen. I sat on the edge of an enormous bed in the Queen's chambers, my hands twisting in my lap. The white gown had been replaced by a nightdress of silk so fine it felt like wearing water. My hair had been brushed until it gleamed, tumbling over my shoulders in waves I hadn't known it could form. The maids had been kind, gentle. They had answered none of my questions about the king, but their silence had seemed protective rather than ominous. One of them, an older woman named Mayela, had squeezed my hand before leaving. He's not what you think, she had said. Give him a chance. I didn't know what to think anymore. A knock at the door. My heart seized. Come in. Kaden entered like a shadow given form. He had discarded his formal wedding attire for a simple black shirt, unlaced at the throat, and dark trousers. His feet were bare. His hair was loose. He looked less like a king and more like a man. A devastatingly beautiful man with darkness crawling beneath his skin and eyes that held more pain than I had ever seen. He closed the door behind him. The click of the latch was impossibly loud in the silence. "You're trembling," he observed. I was. I couldn't stop. I've never... I started, then stopped. I don't know what to. I know. He walked toward me slowly, giving me time to adjust to his presence. Your file mentioned that you're untouched. Another reason your father deemed you worthless. A 23-year-old Omega with no experience and no wolf. He told you that? He told everyone who would listen. Kaden stopped a few feet from the bed. He wanted to ensure no one would bid on you. He wanted you sent to the labor camps. Then why did you save me? The question came out before I could stop it. Kaden was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. Shadows danced across his face. Because I recognized something in you, he finally said. Something I see in myself every time I look in a mirror. What? Someone considered monstrous for reasons beyond their control. He sat on the edge of the bed, leaving space between us. Up close, I could see the dark veins more clearly. They pulsed beneath his skin, creeping up his neck, spreading across his collarbone where his shirt hung open. I should explain something, he said quietly. Before we do this, you deserve to know what you married. The darkness, I whispered. In your skin. What is it? Kaden's jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. A curse, he said finally. Placed on my bloodline 3 generations ago by a witch who believed my grandfather had wronged her. She called it the hollowing. He held up his forearm, letting me see the black veins clearly. It consumes us. Slowly. Year by year, it eats away at everything we are. Our warmth, our emotions, our capacity for connection. That's why you said you couldn't love me. I said I was incapable of love. The curse has taken that from me. It's taking everything from me. His voice was flat, but I heard the agony beneath it. In 10 years, perhaps 20, there will be nothing left. I'll be a hollow shell, a beast wearing a crown. That is my fate. My chest ached with unexpected sympathy. Isn't there a cure? Dozens have been attempted. None have worked. He met my eyes. I tell you this not to gain your pity, but because you should know that your husband is dying. Slowly, but inevitably. Our children will inherit the curse as well, unless something changes. Then why have children at all? Because they are the only hope for breaking it, Kaden said. Every generation we search, every generation we fail. But we keep trying, because the alternative is the end of our bloodline entirely. He paused. I need heirs. That's the truth of it. That's why I attended that auction. That's why I chose you. Because I was desperate enough to agree without asking questions? Because you were the only person in that hall who didn't reek of fear when you looked at me. I blinked. What? Everyone fears me, even my own servants, even my generals. The curse makes me cold, makes me terrifying. Wolves cower before me because they sense the wrongness in my soul. His gray eyes searched my face. But you didn't cower. When I told you to look at me, you looked. When I told you my terms, you accepted them without weeping or begging. You met my eyes as an equal. I don't have a wolf to sense things, I reminded him. I couldn't feel whatever they felt. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're simply braver than you know. The words hung between us. Kaden reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers brushed my cheek. Cold. So cold. Like pressing ice against my skin. But there was something else. a flicker of warmth beneath the cold, buried deep, struggling to break through. "We don't have to do this tonight," he said quietly. "I know this isn't what you wanted for your life. I can give you more time to—" "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. "I accepted your terms. I won't begin this marriage with broken promises." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or surprise. "Very well." He leaned forward and pressed his lips to mine. The cold hit me first. A shock of ice that stole my breath and made my whole body shiver. But beneath it, beneath the curse-born chill, I felt something else. Something desperate. Something hungry in a way that had nothing to do with physical desire. He was reaching for me, not just with his hands, which were now sliding up my arms to my shoulders, but with something deeper. Something that had been starving for connection for years and had forgotten what warmth felt like. "You're so warm," he murmured against my lips. I had forgotten what warmth felt like. I kissed him back. His composure cracked. The careful control he had maintained since I met him shattered like ice on a spring lake. His hands tightened on my shoulders, then slid into my hair, tilting my head back so he could deepen the kiss. The nightgown fell away. I didn't remember removing it. His shirt followed, and then we were skin to skin, his chest against mine, his cold body pressing me back into the mattress. Everywhere we touched, I burned. And he gasped. Not a sound of pain, a sound of wonder, of disbelief. "Seren!" His voice was hoarse. "Seren, look." I looked down at where his hand was pressed against my stomach. The dark veins, the ones that had been crawling up his arms and neck, were retreating, pulling back like shadows from sunlight. Wherever his skin touched mine, they faded, disappeared, left nothing but pale, healthy flesh behind. "That's impossible," I breathed. He pressed his palm more firmly against my skin. The retreat accelerated. Color flooded back into his fingers, his wrist, and his forearm. For the first time since I had met him, he felt warm. "What are you?" he whispered, his gray eyes wide with something I had never seen in them before. "Hope." "I don't know." My voice shook. "I don't understand what's happening." "Neither do I." He pulled his hand away, and immediately, the darkness began creeping back. Slower than before, but still advancing. "But something about you, something in you, it affects the curse." "Is that why you really chose me?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Accusation layered beneath confusion. Kaden shook his head. "I had no idea this would happen. No one has ever had this effect on me. In 3 generations of searching for a cure, nothing has ever pushed the darkness back." He cupped my face in his hands, and the warmth returned where we touched. "Whatever you are, Seren, you might be the answer we've been searching for." "I'm wolfless," I protested weakly. "I'm broken. I'm nothing special." "You're something," he insisted. "Something your father didn't understand. Something powerful enough to push back a curse that has consumed my bloodline for decades." His thumb stroked my cheekbones. "And I intend to find out what." He kissed me again, and this time there was no hesitation, no coldness, just warmth and want, and the desperate hope of a dying man who had finally found a reason to live. We came together in darkness and firelight, and everywhere we touched, the shadows fled. When it was over, when we lay tangled in the sheets with his arms wrapped around me and his heartbeat steady against my back, I felt him press his lips to my shoulder. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Not because of our bargain. Not because I command it. Stay because I'm asking." I turned in his arms to face him. In the firelight, he looked younger somehow, softer. The cruel lines of his face had eased, and those gray eyes held something almost like tenderness. "I'll stay," I said. He pulled me closer, and for the first time since I had been sold by my own family, I felt something I had forgotten existed: safety. But as I drifted toward sleep, a single question circled through my mind. If my touch could push back his curse, what was I? And why had my father tried so hard to get rid of me? I woke to sunlight. Real sunlight. Golden and warm, streaming through curtains that someone had drawn back during the night. For a moment, I simply lay there, disoriented, trying to remember where I was. Then I felt the arm around my waist. Kaden was still asleep. His face was pressed against my shoulder, his breath warm against my skin. Warm, not cold. The realization made me turn my head slowly, afraid to wake him. In sleep, the hard lines of his face had softened. The perpetual tension in his jaw had eased, and his skin. The dark veins were almost invisible, faint traceries of gray beneath the surface, barely noticeable unless you knew to look for them. Color had returned to his cheeks. His lips, which had been pale and bloodless yesterday, were now a healthy pink. He looked human. He looked alive. My movement must have disturbed him because his eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he seemed confused, as if he too had forgotten where he was. Then his gaze focused on my face, and something shifted in those gray depths. "You're still here," he said quietly. "You asked me to stay. I didn't expect you to." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. We lay in silence, studying each other in the morning light like strangers who had somehow ended up in the same bed. Which, I supposed, we were. Kaden lifted his hand and examined it. The dark veins that had crawled up his arms yesterday were barely visible threads of gray. He flexed his fingers, watching the muscles move beneath healthy skin. "It's been 3 years since I've woken without pain," he said, his voice rough with something I couldn't identify. 3 years since the curse didn't feel like it was eating me alive from the inside out. "Does it hurt?" "The curse?" "Constantly." He lowered his hand to rest on my hip, and I felt the warmth of his palm through the sheets. "It's like having ice in your veins, like being slowly frozen from the inside. Some mornings I couldn't move for an hour because my joints felt like they were filled with broken glass. And now? Now I feel—" He paused, searching for the word. "Alive. For the first time in years I feel alive." The wonder in his voice made my chest tight. This man, this ruthless alpha king that everyone feared, had been suffering in silence for years, had been dying by inches while the world whispered about his cruelty and coldness. "The curse takes your warmth," I said slowly, piecing it together. "That's why you're always so cold. It's not natural for you. It's the curse draining you." "Yes." He shifted closer, and I let him. The coldness, the inability to feel emotions, the darkness crawling through my veins. It's all connected. The curse hollows us out until there's nothing left but shadow. But when you touch me, when I touch you, it retreats." His fingers traced idle patterns on my hip. "I don't understand why. I don't understand what you are, or why you affect me this way. But I intend to find out." There was something in his tone, a determination that bordered on obsession. "What if I'm nothing special?" I asked. "What if it was just coincidence? A fluke?" In answer, Kaden pulled away from me. The moment our skin separated, I saw the change begin. The gray threads in his arms darkened, thickened, and began their slow crawl toward his heart. His jaw tightened. Pain flickered across his face. Then he pressed his palm to my stomach, and the darkness retreated. "Not a fluke," he said quietly. "Not coincidence. You." He leaned down and kissed me, and despite everything, despite the strangeness of this situation and the fear that still lingered at the edges of my mind, I kissed him back. The days that followed were unlike anything I had ever experienced. Kaden didn't leave me alone. He came to my chambers every evening, and he stayed through every night. Sometimes we talked for hours, learning each other's histories, our fears, our forgotten dreams. Sometimes we simply lay in comfortable silence, his body wrapped around mine, the curse held at bay by our constant contact. I learned things about him that no one else knew. He loved poetry, though he would never admit it publicly. He had a dry sense of humor that emerged unexpectedly in quiet moments. He was terrified of failing his people, of becoming the monster the curse wanted him to be. He had nightmares about shadows consuming him from the inside, about waking up one day and finding nothing human left. He learned things about me, too, that I had spent my childhood trying desperately to manifest a wolf that never came, that my mother had died when I was 12, and my father had blamed me, claiming my cursed presence had weakened her, that I had taught myself to read by sneaking into my brother's lessons, because girls in Thornvale weren't considered worth educating. "Your father is a fool," Kaden said one night, tracing his fingers through my hair. A cruel, short-sighted fool who couldn't recognize treasure when it lived under his own roof. He would disagree. Then he's wrong. Kaden's voice was fierce. "You're not worthless, Seren. You're not broken. You're the only person in 3 generations who has been able to push back this curse. Whatever you are, it's the opposite of worthless." I wanted to believe him. Gods, I wanted to. But a lifetime of being told I was nothing didn't disappear because a beautiful king said otherwise. 2 weeks after our wedding, I began to notice things. Kaden's generals looked at me with something other than disdain. Respect, perhaps. Or hope. Word had spread through the castle that the king's condition was improving, that he no longer moved like a man in constant pain, that warmth had returned to his voice when he spoke. "They think you're the cure," Mela told me one morning as she helped me dress. "The whole castle is talking about it. About you." "I'm not a cure, I'm just—" I struggled to find the words. "I don't even know what I am." "You're the queen," Mela said simply. "And you're helping him. That's all that matters to us." But it wasn't all that mattered to me, because the more time I spent with Kaden, the more questions I had. Questions he avoided whenever I raised them. Why had my touch never affected anyone before? Why had my father been so desperate to get rid of me? Why had my wolf never manifested? And the biggest question of all, what was I? One night, I woke to find Kaden gone. The sheets beside me were cold, which meant he had been away for some time. I wrapped a robe around myself and padded to the window. There, in the courtyard below, illuminated by purple flame torches, Kaden stood alone. His shirt was gone. Even from this distance, I could see the dark veins spreading across his back, crawling over his shoulders, reaching toward his heart. The curse was advancing, reclaiming the ground it had lost during the day. And Kaden was letting it. He stood perfectly still, hands clenched at his sides, head bowed, accepting the pain, enduring it. Why wasn't he with me? Why was he suffering alone when my touch could help him? I ran. Through corridors that had become familiar over the past weeks, downstairs I had memorized, out a side door into the frozen courtyard. "Kaden!" He spun. In the torchlight, his eyes were more shadow than gray, and the veins had crawled up his neck, reaching for his face. "Go back inside," he said through gritted teeth. "You shouldn't see me like this." "Why are you out here? Why aren't you—" "Because I can't rely on you every moment." The words came out harsh, strained. "Because the curse is still here, still advancing, and every morning when I'm with you, I forget that I'm dying. I forget that this is temporary. I forget that eventually it will take me anyway." I stepped closer. He stepped back. "Don't," he warned. "Don't touch me right now." "Why?" "Because if you touch me, I'll forget again." His voice cracked. "I'll let myself hope. And when the curse finally wins, When there's nothing left of me but shadow and hunger, that hope will make it so much worse. I didn't listen. I closed the distance between us and pressed my palm to his chest. The effect was immediate. The darkness recoiled, retreating from my touch like shadows from sunlight. Kaden gasped, his whole body shuddering as warmth flooded back into him. "You're not dying alone," I said fiercely. "Not while I'm here. Not while my touch can help you. Seren, I don't care if it's temporary. I don't care if you can't love me. I'm your wife, and I'm going to fight for you whether you want me to or not." He stared at me. The shadows in his eyes had cleared, leaving behind gray that was almost silver in the torchlight. Something moved across his face, something raw and desperate and dangerously close to the emotion he claimed he couldn't feel. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you fight for someone who can give you nothing in return? Because you gave me something no one else ever has." "What?" You looked at me like I mattered. My voice was steady, even though my heart was racing. "You chose me when everyone else threw me away. You showed me kindness when I expected cruelty. Maybe that's not love. Maybe you can't feel that. But it's more than I've ever had. And I won't let the darkness take you without a fight." Caden's hand came up to cup my face. His touch was warm now, warm and trembling. "I don't deserve you," he said. "Maybe not." I managed a small smile. "But you have me anyway." He kissed me under the purple flames, and when he carried me back to our chambers, he didn't let go of my hand once. Weeks turned into months. Spring crept over Valdemore, melting the snow from the battlements and coaxing green shoots from the frozen earth. The castle, which had seemed like a tomb when I first arrived, gradually revealed itself to be something else entirely. It was a home. I found myself looking forward to things I had never experienced before. Breakfast with Kaden, where he pretended to read reports while actually watching me over the top of the pages. Walks through the gardens, his hand always reaching for mine as if touch had become as natural as breathing. Evenings in the library curled together on a settee while I read aloud, and he closed his eyes, letting the sound of my voice wash over him. We had become something I didn't have a name for. Not quite lovers, because the arrangement had never been about love. Not quite friends, because our relationship had intimacies that friendship couldn't contain. Something in between, something new. And somewhere along the way, without meaning to, without permission, I had begun to feel things I shouldn't. "You're staring," Kaden said one evening, amusement coloring his voice. I blinked, realizing I had been watching him read for at least 10 minutes. "Sorry, I was just thinking. About how the candlelight made his cheekbones look like they were carved by gods. About how his rare smiles had become less rare around me. About how my heart raced every time he walked into a room." "Nothing important," I lied. He set down his book and crossed the room to where I sat. When he tilted my chin up with gentle fingers, I saw something searching in his gaze. "You're hiding something from me." "Everyone hides things. From others, yes. From me, I would hope not." He paused. "I've told you everything, Seren. My curse, my fears, my nightmares. I've hidden nothing from you." That was true. Over the past months, Kaden had revealed himself layer by layer, like an onion being peeled. Beneath the ruthless king was a man who was tired, lonely, desperate for connection, but convinced he didn't deserve it. I had become his touchstone, the person he turned to at the end of every day, the one whose presence kept the darkness at bay. And "I'm not hiding anything bad," I finally said. "Just something I don't know how to say yet." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "When you're ready to tell me, I'll listen." He kissed my forehead and returned to his book, and I sat there feeling like a coward for not saying what we both already knew. I was falling in love with him. Maybe I already had. The intimacy between us had changed too. In the beginning, our physical relationship had been about the curse, about keeping the darkness at bay through constant contact. But somewhere along the way, it had become about more than that. Kaden had taught my body the way a scholar learns a sacred text. Every touch was intentional, reverent, designed to draw sounds from me that I hadn't known I could make. He had memorized what made me gasp, what made me moan, what made me come apart in his arms. And I had learned him too. The spot behind his ear that made him shiver, the way his control crumbled when I traced my fingers down his spine, the sounds he made when pleasure overwhelmed his careful composure, raw and desperate, and more vulnerable than anything he showed the world. One night, after we had exhausted ourselves and lay tangled in sweat-dampened sheets, Kaden spoke into the darkness. "I felt something today." I turned to face him. "What do you mean?" During the council meeting, Lord Varen was arguing for increased border patrols, and I disagreed with him, and I felt... He paused, searching for the word. Frustration. Real frustration. Not the hollow echo of an emotion, but the actual feeling. My breath caught. The curse steals your emotions, but if you're feeling them again, then either the curse is weakening, or I'm somehow recovering what it took from me. He pulled me closer, pressing his face into my hair. "You're doing this. Your presence. Your touch. You're bringing me back to life. Kaden, if that's true, I know what it means." His arms tightened around me. "It means there might be hope. Real hope. Not just for managing the curse, but for breaking it entirely." I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to laugh and cry and kiss him until neither of us could breathe. But something else was nagging at me. A question I had been afraid to ask. "If the curse breaks," I said carefully, "what happens to us?" He went still. "What do you mean?" "You married me for heirs, for a solution to the curse. If the curse is broken, if you don't need me anymore." "Seren." He pulled back so he could see my face. "Is that what you think? That I would discard you the moment I no longer needed you? You said you couldn't love me. You said this wasn't a fairy tale. I said a lot of things." His voice was rough. I said them because I believed them, because the curse had taken so much from me that I thought I was incapable of feeling anything real. He cupped my face in his hands. "But I feel things now, because of you, and what I feel for you." He stopped. His expression shifted, something dark flickering in his eyes. The shadows in his veins, which had been almost invisible, suddenly pulsed. "Kaden, what's wrong?" "Nothing." But his voice was strained. I can't." He pulled away from me abruptly, sitting up and pressing a hand to his chest. His breathing had gone ragged. "Kaden." "I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. I could see the veins spreading, crawling up his neck like they had that night in the courtyard. "I just need a moment." He was lying. Something was happening. Something connected to what he had been about to say. "What were you going to tell me?" I demanded, grabbing his arm. The darkness retreated where I touched, but it kept advancing everywhere else. "Kaden, what were you about to say?" "Don't." He pulled away again, staggering to his feet. "Don't ask me that. Please." "Why? What happens if I say it?" "The curse will take me." The words came out ragged, desperate. "That's the final trap. If anyone in my bloodline admits to feeling love, truly admits it with their whole heart, the curse accelerates. It kills us within days." My blood ran cold. "What?" My grandfather realized it too late. Kaden's hands were shaking. He fell in love with my grandmother, really, truly fell in love, and the moment he said the words, the moment he confessed it aloud, the curse consumed him. He was dead within a week. "So I can never tell anyone I love them, even if I do, even if it's the truest thing I've ever felt." He finally met my eyes, and I saw it there. The thing he couldn't say. The feeling he couldn't confess. Do you understand now? Do you understand why I told you from the beginning that I couldn't love you? You weren't saying you were incapable, I whispered. You were warning me. I was trying to protect both of us. His voice broke. Because if I let myself feel this, if I let myself have this, the curse will kill me for it. I crossed the room and threw my arms around him. The darkness recoiled, hissing away from our contact like a living thing burned by flame. Then we find another way, I said fiercely. We break the curse before it can take you. We figure out what I am and why my touch affects you, and we use it to destroy this thing. Seren? I'm not going to let you die. I pulled back to look at him, and I let him see everything. Every feeling I had been hiding, every emotion I had been too afraid to confess. I'm not going to lose you. Not now. Not when we're so close to something real. He stared at me with those gray eyes full of things he couldn't say. Then he kissed me, desperate and hungry and full of unspoken words. We didn't talk anymore that night. We didn't need to. The truth hung between us like a promise neither of us could make aloud. 3 months after our wedding, I began to suspect. It started with small things. Exhaustion that didn't fade no matter how much I slept. Sensitivity to smells I hadn't noticed before. A strange flutter in my stomach that could have been nerves but felt like something else entirely. I didn't tell Kaden. Not yet. Not until I was sure. But Mayella noticed. You haven't had your monthly courses? She said quietly one morning as she helped me dress. Not since before your wedding. It could be stress, I said, but I didn't believe it. It could be, Myla agreed, or it could be what we're all hoping for. I pressed a hand to my stomach. Was it my imagination, or did it feel different? Fuller somehow. Warmer. I need to see the healer, I said. The healer was an ancient wolf named Thendris, whose eyes had gone milky with age but whose hands still moved with perfect precision. He examined me in silence, his weathered face revealing nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. You carry the king's child, Your Majesty, perhaps 8 weeks along. The words hit me like a physical force. I pressed my hand harder against my stomach, as if I could feel the tiny life growing there. A child. Kaden's child. Does the king know? Thendris asked. Not yet. My voice was barely a whisper. I wanted to be sure first. You should tell him soon. A pregnancy this early can be fragile, and given the curse's effects on the royal bloodline. What effects? Thendris hesitated. The curse affects heirs in the womb, Your Majesty. Every child born to the cursed bloodline has shown signs of the hollowing from birth. Some... He stopped. Some what? Some didn't survive infancy. The world tilted. I gripped the examination table to steady myself. Are you saying my child might die? Might be born already cursed? I'm saying it's a possibility we must prepare for. Thendris's clouded eyes found mine with unsettling accuracy. But there is also hope. Your touch affects the king's curse in ways nothing else has. Perhaps that protection will extend to your child as well. Perhaps? Not certainly. Not definitely. Just perhaps. I walked back to my chambers in a daze. A child. I was going to have a child. Something I had never dared to hope for. Something my father had told me I would never achieve because I was too broken, too worthless, too cursed to create life. But I had created life. Kaden's life. Our life. And now I had to tell him. He knew something was wrong the moment he entered our chambers that evening. You've been crying, he said, crossing to me immediately. His hands cupped my face, thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized were still falling. What happened? Who hurt you? No one hurt me. I took a shaky breath. I have something to tell you. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. His voice was fierce, protective. Nothing is going to take you from me, Seren. Nothing. It's not bad. The words came out trembling. At least, I don't think it is. But it's complicated and I don't know how. Just tell me. I took his hand and pressed it against my stomach. For a long moment he didn't react. His palm was warm against my belly, his fingers spread wide, and I watched realization dawn across his face like the sun rising over mountains. His voice failed. He swallowed and tried again. We're having a child, I finished. Your heir. Our child. The sound he made wasn't human. It was something deeper, something primal. The sound of a wolf recognizing its mate, its pack, its family. He dropped to his knees. I gasped as he pressed his face against my stomach, his arms wrapping around my hips, his whole body trembling. A child, he whispered against my belly. My child. Our child. Kaden, there's something else. The healer said. I don't care what the healer said. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. The ruthless Alpha King on his knees before me, tears streaming down his face. Whatever risks there are, we'll face them. Whatever the curse tries to do, we'll fight it. Together. The curse affects children in the womb. Some of them don't survive. Then we'll make sure ours does. His voice was fierce, unshakable. Your touch pushes back my curse. Maybe it will protect our child too. Maybe this baby will be the first in generations to be born free of the hollowing. I wanted to believe him. Gods. I wanted to. I'm scared, I admitted. So am I. He rose to his feet and pulled me into his arms. But I've never been more happy in my life. Never. Not even before the curse. Not even when I was a child and my father was still alive, and the world seemed full of possibilities. He pressed his lips to my forehead. You've given me everything, Seren. Hope, warmth, a future, and now a child. How could I be anything but grateful? I buried my face in his chest and let myself cry. He held me through all of it, through the fear and the joy and the overwhelming uncertainty. He held me and whispered promises against my hair, promises about the life we would build together, the child we would raise, the future we would create. And then, as the fire burned low and the shadows lengthened, he made a mistake. He stopped mid-word. His whole body went rigid against mine. I felt the change immediately, the temperature of his skin plummeting, the warmth draining from him like water from a broken vessel. Kaden? His hands clutched at his chest, his face twisted in agony. And when I pulled back to look at him, I saw the darkness surging through his veins, not crawling slowly like before, but flooding through him like a river bursting through a dam. No, I gasped. No, 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 you didn't finish the words. You didn't actually say it. Doesn't matter. His voice was barely recognizable, strangled with pain. The curse knows. It knows what I feel, what I was about to confess. His legs gave out. I caught him, lowering him to the ground as gently as I could. Stay with me, I begged, pressing my hands against his chest. My touch helps you, remember? It pushes the darkness back. Just hold on, please. Just hold on. But the darkness wasn't retreating. For the first time since our wedding night, my touch wasn't helping. It was like the curse had grown stronger. Like his almost confession had fed it somehow, given it power it hadn't had before. Seren? Kaden's hand found mine, his grip weakening by the second. Listen to me. No, don't talk like you're dying. You're not dying. The curse is accelerating. I can feel it. His gray eyes were fading, shadows eating away at the silver. If we don't find a way to break it soon, I won't survive the week. Then we'll find a way. Tears were streaming down my face. I'll find a way. I am not going to let you die, Kaden. I am not going to raise this child alone. You might not have a choice. Don't say that. He pulled me down and pressed his cold lips to mine. The kiss was desperate, flavored with goodbye. Find out what you are, he whispered against my mouth. Find out why your touch affects me. There must be a reason. There must be an answer. Then his eyes rolled back, and he went limp in my arms. Help! I screamed, my voice echoing through the castle. Someone help me! The king is dying! Guards burst through the doors. Healers were summoned. Chaos erupted around me. But all I could see was Caden's face, pale as death, the dark veins crawling toward his heart. And all I could think was, this is my fault. He almost said he loved me, and now the curse is killing him for it. I'm going to lose him. I'm going to lose everything. Unless I find out what I really am. 3 days. 3 days of sitting vigil beside Caden's bed while the darkness consumed him inch by inch. 3 days of pressing my hands against his chest, willing my touch to work the way it had before, watching the curse retreat only slightly before surging back stronger than ever. He woke occasionally, brief moments of lucidity where his gray eyes would find mine, and he would try to smile. Still here, he would whisper. Always, I would reply. Then the shadows would pull him under again, and I would be left alone with my fear and my desperate, unanswered questions. What was I? Why did my touch affect the curse? And why wasn't it working anymore? On the 4th day, Thundress came to me with ancient texts clutched in his weathered hands. I've been researching, he said, spreading yellowed pages across the table beside Caden's bed, looking for anything that might explain your effect on the curse. And there are legends, old stories, dismissed as myth by most scholars. He pointed to an illuminated page depicting a figure surrounded by golden light. They speak of wolves, born without the beast inside them. Wolves whose power manifests not as a second form, but as something else entirely. I leaned closer, studying the image. The figure could have been anyone, could have been me. They were called Solveig, Thundress continued. In the old tongue, it means daughter of the sun. They were said to carry light in their very souls, pure, radiant energy that could heal wounds, cure sickness, and banish darkness. Banish darkness, I repeated slowly. Like a curse? Exactly like a curse. Thundress met my eyes. The Solveig were hunted to extinction centuries ago. Packs feared their power, feared what they could do. But the texts say their light was passed through bloodlines, dormant sometimes for generations before manifesting again. My mind raced. My mother, she died when I was 12. My father said I weakened her, that my cursed presence killed her. Or perhaps she was protecting you? Thundress's voice was gentle. Perhaps she knew what you were, and died keeping that secret. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. My father knew, I whispered. He knew what I was. That's why he wanted to get rid of me. That's why he sold me. If he knew you were Solveig, he would have understood your value. Thundress nodded grimly. A daughter of the sun would be worth a fortune to the right buyer. Worth far more than 70 silver at a common auction. He wasn't trying to sell me cheaply. He was trying to make sure no one would buy me at all. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He wanted me sent to the labor camps. He wanted me to disappear where no one would ever find me or learn what I could do. But why? If you're truly Solveig, you could have brought him power, influence. Unless he was afraid of me. I stood abruptly, my hands clenching into fists. Unless he had done something that my light could expose. Thundress's eyes widened. Your Majesty, what are you suggesting? I looked at Kaden, at the man I loved lying motionless on the bed, shadows crawling beneath his skin. Then I looked at my hands, the hands that had pushed back his curse, the hands that carried power I was only beginning to understand. "I'm suggesting that my father has secrets," I said coldly, "and I'm going to make him tell me every single one." The ride to Thornvale took 2 days. I pushed my horse hard, stopping only when absolutely necessary, driven by a fury I had never felt before. Behind me rode a contingent of Valdemore guards, their faces grim, and their loyalty to their dying king absolute. When the gates of my father's estate came into view, I didn't slow down. "Open in the name of the Queen of Valdemore," the captain of my guard shouted. The gates swung wide, servants scattered as we thundered into the courtyard. And there, standing on the steps of the main hall with a goblet of wine in his hand, as if he hadn't a care in the world, was my father. Alpha Brennick of Thornvale, the man who had called me worthless, the man who had sold me like livestock, the man who had, I now suspected, murdered my mother and hidden my true nature from me my entire life. "Daughter." He smiled, and the expression made my skin crawl. "What an unexpected visit. I heard your husband is dying. Shouldn't you be at his bedside, playing the grieving wife?" I dismounted and walked toward him, my guards fanning out behind me. "I know what I am," I said quietly. "I know what you've been hiding." Something flickered in his eyes. Fear? Recognition? It was gone before I could be sure. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Solveig?" I watched his face carefully as I said the word. "Daughter of the sun. A wolf born with light in her soul instead of a beast." Brennick's composure cracked. Just for a moment, but I saw it. The shock, the fury, the realization that his secret was no longer secret. "Who told you that word?" he demanded. "Who?" "It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is that you knew." I stepped closer, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father take a step back. "You knew what I was from the moment my power manifested. And instead of teaching me, instead of helping me understand, you bound it. You hid it. You tried to destroy me." "You don't understand," Brennick said, his voice rising. "You don't understand what you are, what you could do." "Then explain it to me," I shouted. "Explain why you killed my mother. Explain why you've spent my entire life trying to get rid of me." The courtyard went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Brennick's face twisted. Gone was the composed alpha, the respected leader. In his place was something uglier, something desperate. "Your mother was going to tell you," he spat. "She was going to reveal everything on your 13th birthday. The truth about your bloodline, about your power, about what you could become. And you couldn't let that happen." "Of course I couldn't." He threw his goblet to the ground, wine splattering across the stones like blood. "Do you have any idea what a Solveig can do? Your light doesn't just heal. It reveals. It exposes. It burns away every shadow, every secret, and every lie." My breath caught. "What secrets were you hiding, Father?" "Secrets that would have destroyed this pack." His voice was ragged now. "Secrets that would have destroyed me. Tell me." "No." I stepped forward and pressed my palm against his chest. Light exploded from my hand. I hadn't known I could do that. Hadn't known the power was there, waiting to be called. But the moment I touched him, something inside me awakened, and golden radiance poured from my skin like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Brennick screamed. The light didn't burn him. Not physically. But I could see it working, tearing through layers of deception, exposing truths he had buried for decades. And suddenly, I could see them too. Images flooded my mind. My mother, young and beautiful, confronting Brennick about his affairs, his cruelty, and his plans to sell pack members into slavery for profit. My mother threatening to expose him to the council. My mother dead at the bottom of a staircase, her neck broken, while Brennick stood over her body with cold satisfaction in his eyes. "You murdered her," I gasped, pulling my hand away. She didn't die of weakness. You pushed her down the stairs. Brennick staggered backward, his face ashen. She was going to ruin everything. She was going to tell the truth. Tears streamed down my face, but my voice was steady. She was going to protect me, and you killed her for it. Seren? I spun. My brother Jorath stood in the doorway of the main hall, his face pale with shock. Jorath, did you know? My voice broke. Did you know what he did to Mother? Jorath's eyes darted between me and our father. I suspected. After you were sold, I started looking through Father's records. I found letters, payments to healers who agreed to say Mother died of natural causes. His hands clenched at his sides. I didn't want to believe it. But you do now. Yes. Jorath turned to face Brennick, and for the first time, I saw something other than blind obedience in his eyes. I saw rage. You told me she was weak. You told me Seren killed her with her cursed presence. You made me hate my own sister for something you did. Jorath, listen to me. No. Jorath drew his sword. I'm done listening to you. I'm done pretending I don't see what you are. He looked at me, and his eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Seren. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. It wasn't your fault, I said quietly. He manipulated both of us. Guards! Brennick shouted, backing toward the hall. Guards! Seize them both! The Queen is deranged. She's making false accusations. But the guards didn't move. They looked at me, at the golden light still flickering around my hands, at the truth written plainly on my father's terrified face. One by one, they knelt. The pack recognizes truth when it sees it, the captain said quietly. Alpha Brennick, you are charged with the murder of Luna Brennick and the attempted destruction of your daughter, a Solvay of the ancient bloodline. You will be held for trial. This is treason! Brennick screamed as guards seized his arms. I am your Alpha! You are nothing, I said coldly. You are a murderer and a liar, and you will face justice for what you've done. I turned away from his screaming face and faced my brother. I need something from you, I said. Something Father took from me years ago. What? When I was 13, someone bound my power. There would have been a ritual, a talisman, something physical that holds the binding in place. I gripped Jorath's arm. My husband is dying, Jorath. The curse that's killing him, I can break it, but only if my full power is unbound. Help me find it. Jorath nodded without hesitation. Father's study. He keeps a locked chest beneath the floorboards. I've seen him check it obsessively for years. We found it within the hour. The chest was small, iron-bound, sealed with a lock that shattered the moment my light touched it. Inside, wrapped in black silk, was a crystal vial filled with something that looked like captured starlight. Your essence, Jorath breathed. He bound your power into that vial. I took it in my hands. It was warm, alive, pulsing with energy that called to something deep inside me. How do I release it? Break it, Jorath said simply. Let the light return to where it belongs. I shattered the vial against the floor. The world went white. Power flooded back into me like a river returning to its course. Light blazed from my skin, my eyes, my very soul. I felt myself expanding, becoming more than I had ever been, finally whole after a lifetime of being incomplete. When the light faded, I was still standing. But I was different. I could feel everything now. Every shadow in the room, every secret hidden in the walls, every truth waiting to be revealed. And beneath it all, like a dark thread stretching across miles, I could feel Kaden's curse. I could feel the path to breaking it. I have to go, I said. I have to save him. Jorath gripped my shoulder. Go. Save your king. I'll handle things here. I ran for my horse without looking back. I rode through the night. My guards couldn't keep up. Their horses flagged while mine ran on, fueled by the same desperate energy that burned through my veins. The power unbound within me wanted to be used. It strained against my control like a wild thing eager to be free. I reached Valdemore as dawn broke over the mountains. The castle was in chaos. Servants rushed through corridors with tear-stained faces. Guards stood at attention with hollow eyes. Everyone knew their king was dying. Everyone had given up hope. Everyone except me. I burst through the doors of Kaden's chamber to find Mayela weeping at his bedside. Vendra stood nearby, his ancient face etched with grief. "Your Majesty," he said when he saw me. "You've returned, but I'm afraid it's too late. The curse has... It's not too late." I pushed past him to the bed. "Leave us. Everyone, leave us now." They obeyed. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud. Kaden lay motionless on the bed. The dark veins had spread everywhere now, covering his arms, his chest, his neck, creeping up his jaw toward his eyes. His skin was gray. His breathing was so shallow I could barely see his chest move. He looked dead already, but I could feel his heartbeat. Faint, struggling, but still there, still fighting. "I found it," I whispered, taking his cold hand in mine. "I found what I am. I found my power." Tears streamed down my face. "I know you can't hear me, but I need you to hold on, just a little longer. Please, Kaden. Please." I placed my hands on his chest and closed my eyes. The light came easier now. It poured from my palms in golden waves, sinking into his skin, following the paths of his veins, seeking out the darkness that infested him. The curse fought back. I felt it rise against me like a living thing. It was old, this curse. Older than Kaden, older than his grandfather. Old as spite and hatred and a witch's dying vengeance. It had fed on 3 generations of suffering. It didn't want to let go. "You can't have him," I growled through gritted teeth. "He's mine. Do you hear me? He's mine." I pushed harder. The light blazed brighter. The curse screamed. Not a sound I heard with my ears. A sound I felt in my soul. The death cry of something ancient and malevolent as it was burned away by power it had never encountered before. The dark veins began to retreat. Slowly at first, then faster. They pulled back from Kaden's face, his neck, his chest. They receded down his arms like shadows fleeing the dawn. Everywhere my light touched, healthy skin emerged. Color returned to his cheeks. Warmth flooded back into his body. And then, with a final, agonized shriek, the curse shattered. I felt it break. Felt the chains that had bound his bloodline for 3 generations snap like rotten rope. Felt freedom ripple outward from Kaden's body, touching something deeper. Something connected to the very foundations of his family. The curse wasn't just broken for him. It was broken for everyone. For all their future children. For the baby growing in my womb. I collapsed against the bed, exhausted beyond anything I had ever experienced. My vision blurred. My hands shook. I had given everything I had, emptied myself completely. But I was smiling. "Seren?" The voice was hoarse. Weak, but unmistakably alive. I lifted my head. Kaden's eyes were open, not gray anymore, not shadowed. They were silver, bright and clear, and full of something I had never seen in them before. Light. "You're alive," I sobbed. You're alive, and you're..." He pulled me onto the bed and into his arms. His body was warm, wonderfully, gloriously warm. His heart beat strong and steady against my cheek. "You saved me," he murmured into my hair. "You incredible, impossible, magnificent woman. You saved me. I wasn't going to let you die." My voice was muffled against his chest. "I told you. I was going to fight for you whether you wanted me to or not." He laughed. The sound was rusty, as if he had forgotten how to make it. But it was real. A real laugh. A real emotion. "The curse," he said suddenly, pulling back to look at me. "I can't feel it anymore. It's not just retreated. It's gone." "I know. I broke it." "You broke a curse that's lasted 3 generations?" "I'm a Solvay." I managed a tired smile. A daughter of the sun. Apparently, my light can banish any darkness, no matter how old or how powerful. Kaden stared at me with wonder. Then he cupped my face in his hands and kissed me with more passion than he had ever shown before. "I love you," he said against my lips. "I love you, Seren. I can finally say it. I love you." The words washed over me like warm rain. "Say it again," I whispered. "I love you." He kissed my forehead. "I love you." He kissed my cheeks. "I love you." He kissed my lips, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I will spend the rest of my life saying it, if you'll let me." "I love you too." The words came easily now, freely. "I think I've loved you since you chose me at that auction, since you looked at me like I was something worth choosing." "You were," he said fiercely. "You are. You're the most precious thing I've ever found." We held each other as the sun rose fully over Valdemore, flooding the room with golden light that matched the light still glowing faintly beneath my skin. The curse was broken. Kaden was alive. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I was worth. 6 months later, I stood in the gardens of Valdemore with my hand resting on my swollen belly. The summer sun warmed my face. Birds sang in the flowering trees. Somewhere nearby I could hear Kaden's voice, deep and warm, as he discussed trade agreements with the new Alpha of Thornvale. My brother Jorath had taken our father's place. Brennick himself sat in a cell beneath the Thornvale Hall, convicted of murder and conspiracy, stripped of all rank and title. He would spend the rest of his miserable life knowing that the daughter he had tried to destroy had become a queen, and the son he had manipulated had become a better alpha than he had ever been. Justice, I had learned, could be sweeter than revenge. "You're glowing again." I turned to find Kaden walking toward me, his silver eyes bright with amusement. "I can't help it," I said, glancing down at my hands, where faint golden light flickered beneath my skin. "It happens when I'm happy." "Then you must be very happy indeed." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hands settling over mine on my belly. "Because you glow constantly these days?" "I wonder why that could be." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "Perhaps because you're married to a dashingly handsome king who adores you?" "Perhaps." I leaned back against him, savoring the warmth of his body. "Or perhaps because I'm about to give birth to a perfectly healthy, completely curse-free baby in approximately 3 weeks." 3 weeks. Wonder filled his voice, the same wonder that appeared every time we talked about our child. I still can't quite believe it. A child who will never know what the curse felt like. A child who will grow up free. "Because of you," I reminded him. "If you hadn't chosen me at that auction, if I hadn't chosen you, I would be dead, and my bloodline would have ended in shadow and misery." He turned me in his arms so he could see my face. "You saved us all, Seren. Me, our child, every future generation. You are the light that banished 3 generations of darkness." I had good motivation. "Oh? What motivation was that?" "A certain ruthless alpha king who turned out to be not so ruthless after all." I rose on my toes to kiss him. "A man who showed me kindness when I expected cruelty, who chose me when everyone else threw me away, who gave me a home, a purpose, and a love I never dared to hope for." Kaden's arms tightened around me. "I love you," he said, as he said every day, multiple times a day, as if making up for all the years he hadn't been able to say it. "I love you too." We stood together in the sunlight, the Alpha King and his Solvay Queen, watching the future unfold before us. 3 weeks later, our daughter was born. We named her Leora, which meant light in the old tongue. She had her father's silver eyes and my golden hair, and when she cried, tiny sparks of light flickered around her tiny fists. "She has your power," Kaden breathed, cradling her with more gentleness than I had ever seen from him. "She's like you. She's like both of us." I reached out to stroke Leora's cheek, strong and stubborn and full of light. "And loved." Kaden looked at me with eyes that held no shadows, no secrets, nothing but pure, unguarded devotion. "So incredibly loved." Mila wept with joy as she held the baby. Thendris pronounced her the healthiest royal infant he had ever examined, and when Jorath arrived with gifts from Thornvale, he took one look at his niece and broke into the first genuine smile I had seen from him in years. "She's beautiful," he said. "Mother would have been so proud of you, Seren." "I know." I squeezed his hand. "I feel her sometimes. In the light. Like she's still watching over us." That night, after the visitors had left, and Leora was sleeping peacefully in her cradle, Kaden and I stood on the balcony overlooking our kingdom. "I've been thinking," he said. About everything that led us here. The auction, the curse, your father's cruelty, my grandfather's mistake." He shook his head slowly. "So much pain, so much suffering. And yet, if any single piece had been different, we might never have found each other." "Are you saying you're grateful for the suffering?" "No. I'm saying I'm grateful for you." He turned to face me fully. "Every moment of darkness was worth it because it led me to you. To this. To our daughter sleeping inside, healthy and whole and free." I thought about my own journey. The years of being called worthless. The auction where I had expected to be sold into slavery. The cold king who had chosen me for reasons neither of us understood. And the love that had grown between us. Unexpected and overwhelming and absolutely, completely real. "We were both hiding," I said softly. "You behind your curse. Me behind my bound power. We were both convinced we were monsters, unworthy of love. And we were both wrong." "Yes." I smiled up at him. "We were both wrong." He kissed me under the stars, and I felt Leora's tiny spark of light pulse in response from inside the castle, as if even in sleep, she could sense her parents' joy. We had started as strangers bound by a contract. We had become partners bound by necessity. And somewhere along the way, we had transformed into something neither of us had expected. A family, a future, a love that had broken an ancient curse and would illuminate generations to come. The ruthless Alpha King had chosen a worthless Omega at a desperate auction, and together they had changed everything. And they lived, as the stories say, happily ever after. My pack sold me on a winter morning when the frost still clung to the ground. They said I was worthless, wolfless, a curse wrapped in skin. And as I stood in chains before the cruelest Alpha the realm had ever known, I believed them. Kaden of Valdemore was called many things. Ruthless, merciless. A king who had executed his own generals for failure. Rumors said darkness lived inside him, that shadows moved beneath his skin, that he hadn't smiled in a decade. He walked past warriors and noblewomen without a glance, past Omegas who wept and begged to be chosen, past daughters of allied packs who had been groomed their whole lives for this moment. And then he stopped in front of me. "This one," he said. "I'll take her." The hall erupted. My own father's face twisted with shock before settling into something satisfied and cold. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Me, gone. His shameful, broken daughter, finally someone else's problem. I didn't understand why a king would choose the one wolf who couldn't shift. Not until he made his terms clear. He would marry me, protect me, give me everything I needed to survive. But there was one condition: spoken with a voice like winter wind through dead trees. "I will never love you," he said, "and you will never ask me to." I agreed. What choice did I have? But neither of us understood what would happen on our first night together. Neither of us knew that the moment my skin touched his, everything would change.